This is the Seeing Eye to Eye podcast with Max Medert and me, Shannon Wong. This is podcast number 2. And good evening, Max.
Good evening, Shannon. I didn't think we would start it this way. I like it. So
right.
Today, last time we talked about me, my jaw got sore. I went too long. So now let's hear about you. I think our viewers want to know. Who is Shannon Wong? What's your story?
Well, where do you want to start?
The beginning.
Okay. And you can guide me along if you think it's not that interesting. I was born in Houston, Texas, and my father was completing his ophthalmology residency training at Baylor College of Medicine. This is 1967. And when I was 1, we moved from Houston to Austin. And we lived in Northwest Austin. And I grew up in just a normal Northwest Austin suburb. And then when I was in 3rd grade, we moved to a different school district, the Eanes School District in Austin. And that's where I did middle school and high school. And that's where I grew up.
Okay, yeah. So you come from a family of physicians, I take it. Was just your dad a doctor? Anyone else?
My dad was a doctor. I think I had a great uncle that he was an anesthesiologist, but very distant.
And back when your dad was training, I don't know what the setup was. Was that he had to do like a general surgery and then he would do ophthalmology, or was it like pure ophthalmology by then? I don't know.
He went to Baylor College of Medicine for medical school. He did a straight surgery, general surgery internship with Mike DeBakey and the boys, the good old boys.
Wow.
The Texas Medical Center heart surgeons. And then he did a fellowship in ocular pathology before he did his residency. And finished his residency, I believe, in 1968, and that's when he moved to Austin.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. What was school like? Was it clear like Shannon Wong was going to be a doctor just like his dad? He'll hang out with Dr. DeBakey, these big leaguers, or what was it like?
No, I would say I was a good student in middle school. I was a above average student in high school. Those were tough years growing up, because just there was, bottom line is I was the only minority kid going to school. So I got some of that.
Right.
And, but then, if I had my choice, if I had athletic ability, I would have become wealthy doing professional sports, but I did not have athletic ability. So I saw basically my dad have a pretty good life. And I go, well, if I can't do what all or a lot of young boys want to do, something glamorous, maybe I'll have to make a real living and take the pathway to try to get into medical school.
And you don't feel like, or was there any pressure, is maybe a word someone would use, to go into medicine and to kind of follow that path? Or was this just you being very rational and logical and kind of deriving this yourself?
I think a lot of children are influenced by what their parents do. And if their parents seem to enjoy what they do and they can provide for their family, then it makes you think, well, maybe that's not such a bad way.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there
was no pressure. There was no pressure. They never said, you should go to medical school.
They don't sit down every Wong child and go, this is the path. This is the light. Because you have siblings that are doctors,
really.
right? At least one, maybe
one.
two.
Yeah, I have one brother who's an ophthalmologist.
Okay.
No, they didn't really put pressure. They always said do well in school, and no, nothing direct that I can remember.
What sports did you try out, by the way? I'm curious.
I like basketball.
Okay. Were you on the team or
I was on the team, but
the varsity team?
I made a varsity team. I was not a
Wow.
star athlete by any stretch.
But you made the varsity. That's pretty good. Okay. But yeah, you realized you wouldn't make the big bucks.
I made a
through that.
varsity team at a small private school.
Sure.
Where probably
It's good
everybody can make
context.
the varsity team.
D11 or something. Yeah, I got you.
That's
I got you.
right.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so then you're a senior in high school. You've mastered basketball, but you realize you want to go into medicine. Was there any other option on the list where you think maybe I could be a scientist in any other way, or was it still just medicine and I'm going to apply to college and that's I'm going to guide myself that way, or what was your strategy?
So I'm the youngest of three boys, and I was influenced by what my brothers were doing. And there was always an understanding that, you should learn business. So I had an older brother Sean, who was going to Rice University. He's 4 years older than me, and he studied economics at Rice. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I should do that. So I started doing economics classes, which are kind of like business classes at the time. And it was okay, but I fell asleep all the time in the lectures. So obviously I was it wasn't captivating me.
Sure.
So I wasn't good at math, but I knew I could remember things. So I picked the easiest, the second easiest natural science major, biology. I think the easiest at Rice is kinesiology, but biology is second easiest. And I go, I can remember things, so maybe I'll just do that.
And did you have a minor?
No.
No, kept it clean, focused.
I was trying to keep up with other students at Rice that had far more academic horsepower than I did. So I was in a process of trying to figure out what I was capable of. I didn't even know if I could hang with these people. They're all like super smart. Back in the day, I think the statistic at Rice University, this is in the 80s, was that half of the students were valedictorians. And I wasn't valedictorian. I wasn't even close. So I thought, well, can I hang with these people? So I was just trying to learn how to study, how to kind of develop my academic stamina. How much sleep did I need? How much studying did I have to put in? And so I didn't have the bandwidth to do a minor. I just wanted to get through biology.
How many all-nighters did you pull as a college kid? Do you remember?
A lot.
A lot.
A lot. I'm the person who has to, I remember I would say, you have some people who have that natural ability and you have some people who work hard. I'm the work hard person. But it was interesting. I learned to, at that early stage in college, how people smarter than me, or who I thought they were smarter than me, how they learn, how they study, how they organize their mind. And that was the big, and I felt good being around them because I felt like I was around very high functioning humans. And I could learn by watching how they manage their time and their habits. And it was the process that started in college, and it continues even to this day, of like identifying high performing people and learning and adopting characteristics that they have, emulating them.
It's like, what do they say? You should play tennis with people that are better than you.
Yeah.
So you get better.
Yeah. Or I remember there was this interview with a sportscaster interviewing Tiger Woods when he was a child. They say, Tiger, who's your golf hero? Who do you want to emulate your game after? He goes, none of them. I want to emulate my game and take characteristics of all the greats and compile that and make that part of my game.
Sure. And so you're wrapping up college. Did you play basketball at Rice?
I played intramural I played intramural football. I played intramural basketball. And in college, as a stress reliever, I started to jog.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I tried to stay active.
That's good. And so you're wrapping up college. Now it's time for med school. You know, you tried business. It was too boring. Then you did biology. You harkened back. You remembered your dad, and it's time to do it. Time to go to med school. What were you thinking? Were you still concerned about hanging with the big dogs, or were you feeling pretty confident? What was that like?
Well, you go to Rice. The expectation is you should do better than average. I thought that was the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these Rice students were applying for very competitive medical schools. So I thought, well, what was I thinking? I thought I want to go to the best medical school I can go to.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, my dad went to Baylor College of Medicine, and it seems to be the best in Texas. Well, I didn't go out of state. I went to the best, I think it's officially the number one college in Texas, Rice University. So I thought, well, what's the number one medical school in Texas? What's considered Baylor College of Medicine? I didn't really feel like I had to go to some place far away. So I said, I would like to apply to Baylor College of Medicine. But I remember my grades were kind of like on the border for being super competitive there. So then I took the MCAT, and I remember my MCAT score was like 1 point below the cutoff to be considered for early admission to Baylor College of Medicine. But I had a very good relationship with the pre-medical advisor at Rice. Mm-hmm. And he and I worked together. His name is Nick Iammarino. He and I worked together for all 4 years while I was at Rice. And he basically kind of went to bat for me and said, hey, Baylor College of Medicine, can you guys consider Shannon as an early applicant? And they accepted me, as an early applicant.
Yeah, this is something, I have not thought about, is just these connections you make and really investing in these resources that you have at school. I don't think I did a good job of that, so that it definitely paid off for you to do that.
I've learned that relationships are huge in life. How to build relationships, it's one of the many superpowers that people should really develop.
Mm-hmm. And so you get this kind of a nod from Baylor, basically. Okay, we'll take a look at this guy. Did you have to go and interview in person? What was it like?
Oh gosh, I haven't thought about it in so long. I know it was an in-person interview.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, this was circa 1988. There was no internet.
So you sent your carrier pigeon, and
right.
It came back.
So I remember, let me think here. I was in Houston, and I did remember I went to the post office. No, wait. That was for residency. Let me think back. College. I think it's just, you get their application, you fill it out. And my plan was, if I get in, I'll go. Mm-hmm. And they'll let you know by, I think, early December.
That's early, yeah.
So I knew if I didn't get in, the application process didn't close until maybe end of January or something. Mm-hmm. So my backup was I would submit applications to the other schools. Mm-hmm. Somehow, I don't remember much about the interview process. I really don't. At Baylor College of Medicine.
Do you remember the feeling you had being there? What was it like in 1988?
I thought it was like, that was 1988. I knew about Top Gun. The original Top Gun had come out. Uh-huh. And I thought, this is where the best of the best go. Okay. And it's in the Texas Medical Center, which is the largest medical center on the planet. And greatness came out of Baylor College of Medicine. I thought, wow, I would love to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any aspiration above and beyond that.
Sure.
And I I'd been grinding away for the 3 years and 1 semester at Rice, really just hyper focused on getting into medical school. And then, early December, I got a letter in the mail. They don't let you know by email because email didn't exist. And I got in.
That's great. If we could do a hypothetical, let's say Baylor sends you a letter and they say, we're sorry, Shannon, it's not a good fit. What would have been your pivot? I'm curious.
I would apply to the Texas schools.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would think that back in the day, and I think it still rings true today, Southwestern is another top medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I might have just looked out of state, but I would bet my best chances would be applying in state. I probably would have looked at UT Houston because I was in Houston. I didn't mind being in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
What other schools were there? There's like Texas Tech. I probably would have tried someplace besides that. But that would have been my thought. I didn't really have to go there.
Sure. No, it's just
Fortunately.
interesting. I mean, nowadays, some folks are very regionalistic. I wasn't, for example, but a lot of people look everywhere, right? They look at all the coasts, and then they have to factor in where they live and how people are prejudiced against where people are from. So maybe you don't get any West Coast love because you're from Texas, or maybe East Coast. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so even if you want to go to a place, it may not matter just simply because where you were born or where you live or
Right.
went to school. So I was curious if you had thought ever about like an alternative dimension where maybe you end up on the East Coast. Like, I guess eventually we're jumping ahead. You did end up on the East Coast, but
Right.
Could you have seen yourself living anywhere else?
At that point in my life, I didn't imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
I just really wanted to get into medical school and go to Baylor. I think
clean.
that's because, another thing is that I had my other brother, Sean, who's an ophthalmologist. He also went to Rice, and he went to Baylor College of Medicine. My dad went to Baylor College of Medicine. And so I go, well, that's where I should go.
Okay.
I think that played an influence looking
Very
back.
clean. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Okay, so you get into Baylor, and medical school has probably changed a lot in some ways, and maybe not in others. Walk us through your years. Let's start with the first year, and then go from there.
It was cool because there were people from all over the country who were super smart, and they went to great schools, and everybody was kind of on the same path. We all wanted to become physicians. And yeah, they were just, I remember, so Rice kids are super smart. And then if you take like the top 20% of the Rice kids and you throw them into another school, that's kind of like Baylor College of Medicine. And I thought, this is cool. So now I'm really it's even more elite. And I like that. So I go, well, it's a new game. And now these guys are probably even smarter than the people at Rice that I was trying to learn if I could hang with them. And I got to learn if I can hang with these people in medical school, knowing that supposedly your workload kind of doubles compared to college. It was a good experience. I remember, I kind of think differently, but there's like 168 students in the first year class, and you find your group. I hung out with maybe 20 of them. The other ones, there's some people who are hyper competitive and egos are abundant, and I tried to hang out with the people who were nicer, smart, had a good sense of humor. You could make a lot of jokes with, and just have fun with.
Sure.
Yeah.
Try to avoid the gunners, all that.
Yeah, I remember I would study with some people who were really smart, and you start learning personality types that you don't like. So I remember there's one person, he went to the University of Texas at Austin for undergrad. He was at Baylor my year, and super smart, but he was so smart and he wanted to let you know that he was smarter than you. I didn't like that. And then there was another person who was even smarter than that guy. His name is Mark Kriskovich. So super smart, probably the smartest guy in the class. He was so smart though that he didn't feel like, he never felt threatened by other people. So he would just share willingly because he knows he's smart, but he knows how to keep it in check. He knows how to kind of keep it on the down low. Unless somebody confronts him and tries to put him down, then he actually amps it up. He's the kind of guy who, Mark Kriskovich, he was one of my friends. He's the kind of guy who he would, during third year medical school rounds, he'd start drawing out the organic chemistry structures to explain concepts.
Wow.
He can pull things from different parts of his life verbatim. It's so cool. And I go, wow, you can do that. He goes, yeah. It's pretty cool. So yeah, people who were nicer and who I didn't feel threatened by them, and we could just be friends and not competitive. I don't like to hang out with people that I'm competitive with.
Mm-hmm. Would you say you're naturally competitive? Like, you play Yahtzee or Monopoly or something. Does it turn bad at the end, or what? How do you approach that kind of? Or what do you like in those settings?
I was more outwardly competitive at that phase in my life.
Sure.
Because I think I was less secure. As I evolved and got better, I became more inwardly competitive and less outwardly competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And we can go into that later on, but I used to care about what everybody else is doing, and I would check on them and compare myself. And I realized over time, if I just figure out my own game and execute my game plan, I don't need to. It's not a good use of my energy to be outwardly competitive.
No, I like that. I think that's a really good way of thinking about things. Let's dig into just some of those nitty gritty. I mean, do you remember your anatomy lab? Do you remember what that was like?
Yeah.
These experiences that most people don't get to have, but I think people are maybe curious about what it's like to dissect a body, what that's like.
So we have an anatomy lab, had one and back in the day. So I started medical school. Oh, excuse me. I graduated college 1989. So I misspoke earlier on the date. So medical school spanned from 89 to 93. So we're talking 1990, 89, 90, first year anatomy lab. Yeah, you have people who've donated their entire bodies to the medical school for medical students to dissect and learn anatomy. And that's what we did. I mean, when you get to the anatomy lab, they're sitting in these stainless steel vats that I think have formaldehyde or something like that, because it smelled bad. And then the anatomy teacher goes over what we're learning, and you locate it on the body, and you cut through the skin, you cut through the soft tissue, and you find the nerves and arteries and everything. It was a great learning experience.
Yeah, I mean, I remember thinking it was quite strange sometimes. I don't know, at the beginning when you're not used to confronting mortality, I think it's one of the first times, at least for me, where I had to deal with that, and you're dealing with that for hours at a time.
Yeah.
With a person who's dead.
Yeah.
But a very generous dead person. So it's an interesting, sometimes it was hard for me.
It gets kind of meta, because then you hold their brain and you go, wow, I'm holding another human being's brain. Imagine the experiences that they process through this brain, the memories, and now it's just gone. So it's pretty, it makes you think.
Right.
And so I have one son who's in medical school, and they don't do anatomy the same. So all of their anatomical sections are already pre-prepared. They don't actually have to, from what he describes, they don't start with the whole body. They just focus on kind of pre-prepared sections of the body.
That's interesting. I mean, we would have that too, where the professors who are very good at dissecting, I mean, incredible, kind of tailor some bodies they set aside for exams and stuff. But I don't know. I'm curious what the literature is on that. Why, the advantage of sections versus, I guess you need fewer bodies.
I don't know.
I
would imagine that there's more than enough bodies to go around.
I don't know. I don't know the process. Do you know it, like at the end? I don't recall in the hospital ever asking patients, family or patients, if they wanted to participate.
I mean, on the back of your license, I think you.
Oh.
Don't you? Let me look at my license here.
Well, there's organ donor.
Yeah, organ donor, but
there's
maybe the people when you die, directive to physicians. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the process.
Yeah.
I should know, but I don't.
Well, you'd think it'd be more obvious because there's so many medical students every year and there's so many cadavers.
Yeah.
Where are they coming from? So that's something we can look into, I guess, off the radio here. But so other things that are really critical. So you're in the classroom right at the beginning. You're talking about your experience studying and stuff like that. And now it's third year. That's when you transition to the floors. What was it like?
Yeah, at Baylor you go 18 months of basic sciences, then the following 2.5 years are clinical rotations. Back in the day, there was no 1 year of research or anything like that. So the one thing a couple of things come to my mind. Basic sciences, you're graded. You take tests, you get numeric scores. It's somewhat objective. And that's the way it was in college and all the grades K through 12. It's for the most part, it's objective, or you write something down and it's objective. And I think I got pretty good at that. But then when you go to clinical rotations, there is a great deal of subjectivity. And I didn't, looking back, I knew so little about that subjectivity. And I think if I could do it again, I would be far more wise about how to play that game. So yeah, I enjoyed learning medicine. Some rotations were more memorable. General surgery, Ben Taub, which is the Harris County Hospital District's main hospital. Baylor medical students spent a lot of time there. That was good. I didn't really love internal medicine. I didn't really love pediatrics. I enjoyed the surgical specialties. I thought psychiatry was kind of cool. Even before psychiatry, I wasn't even sure if some of these, back then it was DSM-3. I don't even know what it is now, DSM-5 or 6 or 7, or I don't even know what it is.
It's 5.
Yeah, but I didn't even know about these mood disorders. DSM-5?
2013. Hold on, maybe there's another one before we get emails. Debate remains over changes in DSM-5. I think it's 5.
What did you learn from?
I don't even remember, but I do remember these things you didn't think were possible.
Yeah, I'd never seen some of these things, and I go,
Yeah.
holy moly, this stuff is real. That's when I learned that these psychiatric conditions, they're real. I kind of grew up in a bubble where I was unaware of a lot of these things. Bipolar, schizophrenia, psychosis, alcoholism, drug addiction. I didn't see a lot of that growing up. So when I saw it in people, and it was like by the book, textbook display of these conditions, I thought, wow.
Yeah. I mean, and there's what's also interesting is you learn about, for me at least, how wrong the media portrays many of those diseases. I don't think they do a very good job in film or television of portraying what schizophrenia really is. You get down into those nitty gritty, like it's disorganization, it's auditory hallucinations, very specific things, and you had to learn this book very clearly. And that part's kind of the easy part. The hard part is talking to a person and extracting those and distilling it, being like, oh, this is the diagnosis. And you can usually do it.
Right.
Which is incredible.
It is pretty cool. I mean,
You'd think it'd
psychiatry
be
is pretty cool.
more gray. But actually, they can very neatly, most of the time that I saw, distill these things. So that's interesting. Did you have a crisis of faith? Like, maybe ophthalmology is not my bag. Maybe, maybe psychiatry. I like those couches.
To be real, I kind of knew that I wanted to go into ophthalmology. Mm-hmm. So a majority of the medical school, I would say, yeah, I'm interested in whatever rotation I'm going through, neurology or whatever it is. But I kind of had a sense that if I could get into ophthalmology, I would do it.
And maybe I should have asked you this earlier, but when you were growing up and maybe even during medical school and your time at Rice, were you visiting ophthalmology practices? Did you work at your dad's office?
No. I had more ophthalmology exposure than most people because my dad's an ophthalmologist. But I did not know anything outside of what he did. So I would say that is something prior to the age of 25, I thought my parents were gods. I thought they could do nothing wrong, and they were my primary source of information. It wasn't until I grew older and I opened my eyes, I go, oh, there's a lot of other ways to do things. So I didn't see any other ophthalmologists in practice until I started doing clinical rotations in medical school.
That's interesting. You never worked up patients as a technician, or you would mostly
with my dad?
Yeah, were you ever at Austin Eye?
No.
Just the kid in the back. Hey,
I was the kid in the back who filed files because we didn't have a computer, right? Mm-hmm. This is 70s and 80s. I filed things. I put paper statements in envelopes and licked them and addressed them. Mm-hmm. I cleaned the building.
Really?
Yeah, I did the scut work. I didn't do any high-level white-collar duties.
Never shadowed your dad? Did you go to the OR with him ever?
I did. I started going to the OR with my dad when I was in high school. So he would do cataract surgery at a hospital called St. David's. And I actually worked in St. David's in high school as basically, the term back then was an orderly, but I guess they would now call it a surgery center assistant or something like that. But basically, I'm off the floors, and in between mopping floors and taking out the trash, I would watch eye surgery, and I met other ophthalmologists in town. And so I kind of know, I'm aware of ophthalmology in Austin and the people my dad knew. So I kind of know the history of ophthalmology from the 1960s to present day in Austin. So yeah, there were the busiest surgeons who were doing cataract surgery at the time were, I knew them all in the 1980s, I would say.
Were you allowed to scrub? Could you ever sit?
I never scrubbed. No. I would look through the assistant microscope or watch just with the naked eye.
How did that feel for you the first time, if you remember? Or
I remember I thought it was cool, and I didn't realize it at the time. And I try to do this when I try to make the time. When somebody comes in and watches me do surgery, I try to spend 2 to 3 minutes with them beforehand saying, this is what we're going to do. So you actually understand what you're watching, because I watched and I didn't even know what I couldn't contextualize it. I didn't know the eye anatomy. I knew there was a lens that was coming out, but I didn't know the significance of anything. When I was watching my dad do surgery or the other doctors, I knew I wasn't supposed to ask questions.
It was a quiet OR kind of setup.
Right. No, or they would have the nurse and scrub tech kind of banter, but I'm not supposed I'm just the high school student or the college student working for the summer. I'm not supposed to really, I'm supposed to be lay low.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. So there was definitely some precedent. You had, yeah, like you said, more experience than most.
Yeah, but nothing that was really high level. I didn't work as a technician or anything like that.
I mean, yeah, but your experience is definitely beyond, yeah, most anyone. And then, so you're in back to third year. Did you have an elective? Were you able to choose ophthalmology?
Yes.
You said you could kind of,
Yeah,
you had
so
some time there.
in medical school during the basic sciences, I think we had like 1 week of lectures where it was ophthalmology and ENT, maybe 1 week. And then during your clinical rotations, I think there's a combined ophthalmology ENT elective or rotation. I think it's 2 weeks of each for a month. I think that's what it was. I think most of the medical students did at least a week of ophthalmology during their clinical rotations. Maybe it was 2 weeks total. 1 week of ophthalmology, 1 week of ENT. ENT was kind of cool. The ENT guys seemed pretty cool. But then I think I did an extra ophthalmology rotation at the county hospital at Ben Taub for a month. And then I did a rotation with a private or another faculty member at Baylor College of Medicine, Milton Boniek, who is still alive. And I just went 2 weeks ago to a ceremony where my parents, so Milton Boniek was an ophthalmologist. He's like, I called him back then, I called him Yoda. Okay. Privately, not to his face, but Yoda because he inspired my dad to go into ophthalmology. And then he was still around when I was a medical student at Baylor. So I took a rotation with him, and he wrote a letter of recommendation to help me get into residency. So he was kind of multi-generational influential to our family.
Wow.
So then, 2 weeks ago, I'm getting ahead, but my parents donated, as a token of gratitude, money to Baylor College of Medicine to endow a annual lectureship. That's that Dubovy, Dr. Dubovy from Bascom Palmer was the inaugural lecturer of the Milton Boniek lectureship. So because this was the inaugural lectureship for this endowed lectureship that my parents started, we went down there 2 weeks ago. Milton Boniek, who's in the the sunset of his life, he was there, and my parents were there. Actually, I'll post the picture. It's pretty cool. It's a picture of Milton Boniek, Ken Maddox, who's like a legend at Baylor College of Medicine. He's a general surgeon who taught everybody general surgery. My parents, me and my wife and my mom, and our youngest son, who's applying to medical school. So it kind of shows you just kind of, it's a personal photo that I think it resonated with me because it shows, life is finite, but you can have a big impact. Because Milton Boniek here, he's like 90. He's 6 years older. He's 6 years older than my dad. Yeah, so he's 90. And our youngest son who's applying to medical school, he's 21. And we're all sitting there in a row, and it's kind of cool.
That is really cool. Yeah. Is it Boniuk?
Yes, Milton Boniek, yeah.
And so you did your rotation with Dr. Boniek.
Yeah, so those were the two major rotations. So a county hospital rotation at Baylor, and then the 1 month with Milton Boniek.
Yeah. And he was a pathologist?
Ocular pathologist.
That's why they sponsored Dr. Dubovy, because he's an ocular pathologist.
Yes, that's right. And so my dad did a fellowship.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
In ocular pathology before he started residency.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It all comes together.
Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. and you were hinting at letters. You had to get prepared, right, for residency. That's the big game.
Right.
To me, I think residency is where the metal or the rubber meets the road. What was that like? What were you thinking? Were you feeling confident? How was Shannon's mind?
I cast a wide net. So I would say I'm a good or above average student, but I am not what I would consider an elite student. Like your MCAT score, I can't do that. So that's really, I admire that. One of our kids has that elite brain, and I'm amazed at it because I go, wow, you're doing things I could never do academically. That's so cool. But when I was applying for residency, I remember I applied to a lot of schools. I still have the list. It's probably 40 to 60 schools. And yeah, you you're only going to get one of two options as the outcome. You're going to get into one or you're going to get into none.
Right.
It's a binary outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied everywhere. I interviewed probably at 6 to 8 places, and I got into probably like my 6th ranked choice. Let's say I interviewed at 8 places, I got into my 6th ranked choice, and I thought, oh my God, it was Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I go, I don't know much about this at all. I don't know anything about Philadelphia. I've lived in Texas all my life. Well, at least I got in ophthalmology, so I'm happy about that. But this Philadelphia thing and this Temple thing, I hear it's in a rough part of town. I don't know how that's going to work out. So back then, you get into residency. So I was fortunate to get into ophthalmology residency at Temple, and it ended up being a great experience. But you have 1 year that you have to spend as an internship because ophthalmology residency starts the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year after medical school. Your first year is an internship. So I chose that's the point in my life where I was pretty much done with Houston. I've been in Houston for college and medical school 8 years. I've been in Texas all my life. I'm a single guy. Maybe I should get out of Texas. So growing up, California was kind of mythical. California, glamorous. There's probably a great social scene out there. And so, yeah, I did an internship in San Jose, California. And I remember when I had already realized I was going to do ophthalmology, I spent an elective month before graduation doing a rotation at Stanford, learning hand surgery, because I thought that was kind of cool. And so that was also an excuse for me to live in the Bay Area for like 6 weeks. And it was awesome. I thought, this is awesome. I'm living the dream. Here I am in what I consider a resort community at the time, the Bay Area, San Francisco, San Jose, Berkeley, that area. And then I knew I was going to do an internship there. So I ended up spending probably, 13, 14 months out in California between the final 6 months of medical school and starting residency in Philadelphia. But it was great. It was called the Santa Clara Valley Medical Center in San Jose, California. I did a transitional internship. It was good. I mean, you work hard, but it wasn't probably as brutal as like doing a straight surgery internship at Baylor College of Medicine.
No.
Yeah.
Did you have ICU? What was your...
I did have ICU.
Oh, man. What was that like?
I had ICU in medical school, and I had ICU in somewhat, probably just as part of my internal medicine rotation during that transitional internship. I don't remember a lot. I just remember you had to go through and get all the labs, track their temperature. There's learn ventilator settings, learn medicines, learn ins and outs and how much fluid and all this other stuff. And you just do it because you have to. But it wasn't like something I loved.
Did you have to draw the labs yourself?
Yes.
Or was there a phlebotomist?
Yes. No. I learned. That was another part of the experience. It, like when I would growing up, I mentioned like in high school, in middle school, elementary school, I'd work in my parents' office, ophthalmology practice, but I'd do all the scout work.
Mm-hmm.
Clean, pick up trash, organize things, nothing academically challenging, intellectually stimulating. Baylor College of Medicine, you do all the scout work. You sew up people who are in the emergency room. You change dressings. You draw all the labs. And I did that as an intern as well. And I kind of developed a do-it-yourself mindset. I can do it all. I'm not too good for anything. And I had that mindset. I carried that forward a little too long, even into ophthalmology practice. I'll do it all. I don't need to hire staff.
Right.
I don't need to hire other doctors. Ophthalmologists can do everything. We can do contacts and glasses and primary eye care and eye surgery. Contextually, my dad grew up and practiced doing comprehensive ophthalmology, and he did retina detachment surgery. He did oculoplastic surgery. He did refractive surgery.
Wow.
So that there's a transition. Even ophthalmologists back in the day, they were ophtho and ENT, right?
Right.
EENT, eyes, ears, nose, and throat. And then it came my dad's generation where it was still comprehensive. And I think as time has gone by, we've all kind of learned that having a division of labor and working collaboratively, letting retina people do retina, letting cornea people do cornea, letting refractive people do refractive is a net win for everybody.
Right.
But I had to get over that because I grew up with we'll draw our own labs, do everything as the intern.
What were your hours like as an intern or maybe a resident, if we want to skip ahead a little?
Internship wasn't that bad. I think medical school was probably a little harder. So Baylor, they beat you a little bit. And you have to learn how to take the pain.
Yeah.
I remember even the mindset carried forward to internship where I was doing surgery and the co-intern said, you got to learn to take the pain. Hit me again. Give me another admission. Hit me again. So you just had to prove yourself.
Right.
You were always having to prove yourself, and sleep was really optional. I think they kind of cracked down on that after that time in my life, and now they regulate the hours. But back then they didn't really regulate it. But
And
that's okay. It's all
feel
good.
good. What do you think about that?
I think there's good in that. I think there's less desirable attributes to that. I remember interviewing patients and falling asleep kind of basically when they weren't paying attention.
Wow.
And so, it's hard for me to stay up late at night. I knew I could never go into OB-GYN and be called to help somebody deliver their baby in the middle of the night over and over again for the rest of my life. I needed controlled hours, but I was willing to take the pain
Right.
to get to a better ending. I can suffer as long as I know there is a higher aspiration waiting for me down long term, which was ophthalmology.
Right. And okay, so intern year was easier. That's interesting than med school.
I think in some ways it was because I think I got more sleep.
Sure. And you're in that beautiful San Jose.
Yeah,
Valley.
I had more time to socialize during my internship than I did in medical school.
That's interesting. I think that's for some people. If you play your cards right and you're smart, you can do that.
Yeah, I think you need to choose it. You can't choose it now because I think if you do ophthalmology, your internship is intimately linked to the same institution where you do your residency. But I was able to kind of pick and choose. And I knew it wasn't going to be too bad as an intern where I went.
Yeah.
And
Smart. And you were single.
Yeah.
You had no other considerations.
Right.
other
No,
than-
just stay fit, hang out with friends, socialize, do the work at the hospital.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
So then now you're in Temple. It's I don't know much about Temple. I interviewed at University of Pennsylvania. I did not interview at Wills. Yeah, no, I did not. Not for residency. So that's all I got. I don't recall.
Yeah. Philly.
Where
this
Temple
is-
was.
Now we're circa 1993. No, excuse me, circa 1994. Go to Philadelphia. I think I may have visited it briefly, maybe like take a train through it or something like that. Let me think here. I did visit Temple to interview for their ophthalmology residency. That was an in-person interview. I remember, I don't think about it, but now I can recall being there and talking with the residents and the faculty and kind of seeing the physical facilities. It was fine.
What was the structure? Like, is there a VA? Is it a county hospital, or is it just Temple's
Yeah.
own private? Like,
But back
what's
in
the
the
setup?
day, it's Temple University Hospital, which is part of Temple University School of Medicine. And it's in North Philadelphia, which is the rough part of Philly. And there was a children's hospital called St. Christopher's. I don't even know if it still exists. It was also in North Philly. And then there's a private hospital that we rotated through at Temple called Lankenau Hospital. It's in the main line of Philadelphia, which is the more affluent suburban area. And then we spent some time in Wilmington, Delaware, at Wilmington Hospital, doing ophthalmology there. So those were kind of the 4 sites where we learned ophthalmology. And I actually, I had reservations about being there, but I quickly realized that, hey, there's the University of Pennsylvania there, and there's Wills, and look at there. They have lectures early in the morning before the Temple clinic or lectures even begin. They have weekend conferences quite often, and the Temple ophthalmology residents interfaced with the Wills Eye faculty quite a lot. So I just tapped into all those resources. So I would get up early in the morning. I think if they had it like 6:30 or 6:30 lecture, 6:30 to 7:30, every morning at Wills there was a lecture, and I would get there early.
Wow.
And then 7:30 to 8, I'd commute to Temple, get to Temple by 8, do my day there. And then on weekends when there was a conference, which there's a ton of them at Wills and Shea throughout the year, I would go to those. So I was I was trying to learn as much as I could.
That's impressive. I think a lot of people would not do that. Did your co-residents do this, or was this just you?
The co-residents did it a lot less than I did. I was more worried that I wasn't getting enough. So I go, well, I'm here. I need to make the most of this. The people. I need to make the most of this opportunity. Because if there's even a remote chance I'm not getting the full picture at Temple, I'm going to tap into these people. They supposedly are like the best of the best.
Sure.
So let's go there.
That's really great. In Chicago, there's a shared lecture series there where all the residencies are invited every week to learn together. And it's more structured than what you're describing, but I think it's nice that Wills even let you come, honestly.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know if every place would do that.
Yeah, some of my best friends I made were Will's residents.
Interesting. How many per year at Temple? Was it 3? 3. Okay. And what was your call like, back in 94?
Okay, so the call, we had a big Motorola flip phone where the battery was on the outside,
Yes.
And yeah, I remember that was how I'd have a beeper,
Uh-huh.
and then I had the Motorola flip phone that I could return calls on. And
So people wouldn't call this phone directly.
no,
This
they
phone
paid
was
you.
they paid you, and then you would
Then you
call using this
call.
very sophisticated
That's
phone.
right. It was about like that big, and it kind of just flipped out at the bottom so you
Yes.
could talk.
Yes.
And I thought that was awesome because I had a cell phone
Yeah.
or a mobile phone or cellular phone. I guess that's what we called it. It was a
Yeah.
Motorola product, but it wasn't too bad. I mean, it's ophthalmology call for God's sake.
Sure.
But you always get the page. We got a guy who's he's sitting there minding his own business, and some dude jumped him.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, basically it's like a Coke bottle or baseball bat to the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go in and you work on eye injuries, orbital injuries, lid lacerations, open globes, that kind of thing.
Were you doing this? Were these staffed, or were you alone?
It would always be, if it required surgery, it would be staffed.
Okay.
But if it were just in the emergency room, I think it was not necessarily staffed. It was, it was just me. It was just, if it's non-surgical, I didn't have the attending come in at all.
Sure. Let's say you had a question. What was the culture like? Would you call the attending,
I
or
would
was
call
it the
the
third
other
year, or
residents. I
whoever?
would call
Yeah.
the other residents.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's something maybe people don't know is that, and it's different at every hospital, every institution, but sometimes if you come in at a certain time of night, you're just seeing the resident, right?
Right.
There's no other person there in the building. They may not talk to anyone.
Right.
And usually that's a good thing. It's because you're okay,
Yeah.
right? They're not nervous. It's a common eye condition or what have you. And they
Yeah,
take care
you
of it.
kind of just look up in the Will's Eye manual,
Mm-hmm.
what do I do? And you follow the protocol, and that's how you learn.
Right.
And it works.
That autonomy is important.
Yeah.
I'd say probably, I would imagine, since you trained, the hand holding has gone up.
Oh, really?
I would guess.
Okay.
That's my assumption.
Not a bad thing.
No, patient safety, right, always comes
Yes.
first. But I think academics, it's interesting. It's a really tough balance between teaching, learning, and safety.
Right.
Especially surgery. I don't know if you could
Right.
comment on your surgical experience. What was that like? Learning cataract surgery, how that was structured for you.
I probably did, I don't know. I can't remember how many cataracts I did. Let's say close to 200 cataracts.
Mm-hmm.
They were all staffed by an attending. Most of my surgery was staffed by an attending. I don't really remember only having a resident staff things. I don't think that was very common.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah, they would help me in the emergency room and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that started the phase of my life because I thought that Temple was kind of it was not an elite ophthalmology program. It was kind of a mid-third kind of ophthalmology program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew I had to learn to teach myself. And that has helped a lot because I've kind of carried that forward over my life.
Mm-hmm.
You can, if you are proactive and curious, you can learn a lot by building relationships with others. Or back in the day, I remember I would drive around, I would order these cassette tapes of ophthalmologists talking about like cataract and refractive surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And it was people like George Waring III, Dick Lindstrom, Doyle Stolting. They would be talking about cataract and refractive surgery, and I would listen to these cassette tapes as I was commuting during the day. And that's how I would learn. Nowadays it's a podcast, but back then it was
Sure.
that cassette tape thing.
Like the big plastic thing that has all the little cassettes in them, and you crack it open like a book, or
Yeah, the
you know what I'm
little
talking about?
little cassette tape, just the little
Oh, I'm
know,
picturing like you had a series, right? Like
oh,
probably
I
like
probably
6
would
of them.
just keep them in like in a little case and put them in my glove
Nice.
box.
Nice.
Nothing, nothing elaborate.
So
But yeah, I learned to teach myself a lot. Be curious and learn from people who are better than you.
So were you thinking at any point during your residency, I want to do a fellowship?
No,
Why?
I thought my dad knew everything. And my brother was working with my dad at the time. And they thought they knew everything. So they thought they knew everything. I believed them. So I thought, I don't need a fellowship. They can teach me everything. But then that started a process where I became more and more aware that they didn't know everything at all. They knew very little, and I needed to keep teaching myself. So even like learning, well, I didn't learn much LASIK during residency. I took a course on PRK. I think I took a course on LASIK. I know I did. I took a LASIK course. I traveled to Arizona to meet with one of the early innovators of refractive surgery. His name is Charles Casebeer. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I've never heard of this person.
Casebeer. So I took a course from Charles Casebeer and a course at like George Washington University on PRK. And I did very little refractive surgery. But when I was starting practice, LASIK was emerging. This is 1997. And my dad and brother had invested in the first FDA-approved excimer laser. It's called a Summit excimer laser. And it was approved for like myopic treatments, spherical myopic treatments.
Right. No stigmatism.
Right.
None of that.
And so they were using, it's called the automated corneal shaper, made by a company called Chiron, which acquired the automated corneal shaper, which is a mechanical flat making device from, I think, a Steinway company. Anyway,
A piano company.
I think Steinway instruments of some sort.
Interesting.
So I'll fast forward, but during the doctor's meeting, remember I showed you that picture of these people, and one of the people in that picture, he was involved with that microkeratome since its inception.
Wow.
So these are very forward-thinking people. But anyway, my dad and my brother were doing LASIK already. They were the first to do LASIK, to my knowledge, in Austin in 1995. And they seemed to know everything, but just to hedge my bets, I bought some books on LASIK. So I would learn from somebody other than them.
Their perspective.
And that kind of was good because then I learned, nobody knows everything.
Sure.
You got to double check everything, cross-reference it from other sources, have an open mind.
Right. And I think I do have a question about practices. Did you have a different job before you worked at Austin Eye?
No. I've had one job.
Wow.
Yeah, so straight out of residency. So the sequence of events was I left Philadelphia and drove to Austin, and I started working like when I arrived.
3 hours after.
So
you got
I
there.
basically didn't take any time off between residency and working because
Why?
I was poor. I had no money. And my wife Betty at the time was we were expecting our first child, and we had just purchased a home
With no money.
with no money. We got a mortgage, and our let me think here. How many bedrooms did we have? 1, 2, 4 bedroom house. Let me think out. 1, 4-bedroom house, 2,800 square feet. It was about $225,000 back then. So we got a mortgage for that. And I knew how to work. So that's what I did.
Wow. Okay. So you were talking about moving back to Austin.
This is my only job.
Yeah, you said for 20. Yeah. But did you say the stuff about your dad and your brother not knowing stuff after that or before that?
Well,
think it was
I thought
before
they
that.
knew everything, but then I realized they didn't. And so I started kind of always, I read every journal I could get. So I had a breadth of understanding that was outside of what they were saying.
Sure.
I mean, what they were doing was fine, but there's more than one way to do something. So I needed to make sure I understand other ways of doing things.
The echo chamber of a private practice that, I could see what you're describing, where you get good at what you do and maybe, were they going to meetings, stuff like that?
They were going to meetings, yeah. Ever since we were younger, or I started, I always go to the American Academy of Ophthalmology and the American Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgery meetings, and I'd learned there. But yeah, I was still evolving. I was 29 when I started back in Austin practicing, and I mean it was a great opportunity. This is my dream job, to come back here to home, work with my dad and my brother at the time. That was my dream. I wrote about that in my personal statement.
Really?
Applying to medical school even. I remember I still have that personal statement.
Wow.
So it was good times, and I've been here since 97, same job.
Okay, so I think that's a natural place to stop. You've come full circle, right? You were a young kid growing up, working the shelves at your dad's office. It was always your dream to be there, and now you've made it. And I think that's an amazing story. I really enjoyed hearing about it and learning more about you and your path. I think next time or in the future, actually, we'll circle back and we'll talk about what it's like to be a young doctor and what private practice is like. It's not easy. So this is a good place to stop. So we should say our famous catchphrase. You ready?
Ready.
Thank you for seeing eye to eye. Good job.